build a city on a swamp, on waterlogged mud, on shifting silt where even trees refuse to grow. Let's dive deep into the layers of mystery, engineering magic, and a beautiful madness of Venice, the city that shouldn't exist. The story of Venice begins not with a blueprint, but with fear. In the 5th and 6th centuries AD, waves of barbarian invasions pushed northern Italians to flee their inland cities. The inhabitants of the mainland fled to the Venetian lagoon. At the time, the lagoon only contained a series of marshy islands that would seem inhospitable, as each island could barely even support the weight of a human body. If you stepped onto the islands, you would sink to about your waist. But what really lies beneath Venice? Ancient crypts? Maybe even Atlantis' jealous cousin? Let's pull back the waters and explore. At first, it wasn't about building a city. It was survival. The refugees who sought safety in the lagoon were driven by the necessity to create a new kind of settlement that could survive in such an environment. But these early settlers were clever. They knew they couldn't build on the water, but maybe they could build in it. Early Venetians lived in rafts and stilt huts, moving from island to island like nomads on water, until they learned how to root their homes. Its earliest engineers weren't trained. They were fishermen, monks, and refugees working with rope, logs, and stone. Here, we will start at the very first layer of the foundations. The construction challenges posed by the Venetian lagoon's soft marshy soil, which lacked load-bearing capacity, led the Venetians to develop this solution: wooden piles. They drove them deep into the soft, muddy ground, creating a stable foundation to build their homes and public buildings. But because these logs are constantly submerged and sealed off from oxygen, the Venetians discovered a trick. If you drive wooden stakes, typically oak or alder, deep into the compressed clay layer beneath the mud, they don't rot. Instead, they slowly mineralize, hardening like stone. How many trees did they use? Historians estimate over 10 million wooden piles were used across the islands. The wood came from as far as Slovenia and Croatia. Entire forests were sacrificed to raise Venice. Some of these piles still stand under iconic structures, like the Rialto Bridge and St. Mark's Basilica. These piles had varying diameters, ranging from 10 to 25 centimeters, 3.94 to 9.84 inches, and heights from less than 1 meter to a maximum of 3.5 meters, 3.3 to 11.5 feet, with approximately 9 piles driven into the ground per square meter. In addition to the mineralization process, the lagoon's thick layers of clay and mud also play a vital role in preserving the piles. The clay's fine particles have a dense and cohesive structure. This density allows the clay to support the weight of the wooden piles and stone foundations without shifting. Above the wooden piles, the Venetians laid wooden platforms, then topped those with slabs of Istrian stone, a dense limestone from Croatia that's so tough it doesn't crumble in salty air. Moving up the layers of Venice's foundations, we approach the second layer, the stone, brick, and mortar. The combination of stone, brick, and wood was key to the success of Venetian foundations. Wooden piles provided the needed support to stabilize the foundation, while brick and stone offered the strength and water resistance required to build long-lasting structures. Using the resources available to them, they were able to build a city that has lasted until the present day, despite the constant threat of flooding and the unstable ground beneath it. And it worked! For over 1,000 years, this city has stood, even as tides lapped at its feet. Once the base was ready, they started building upward. Most Venetian buildings were made of bricks, which were lighter than stone and less likely to shift or crack. The final touch? Beauty. While the lower parts of buildings were practical, the upper sections dazzled. Architects and artisans used marble, stucco, mosaics, and frescoes to decorate homes, palaces, and churches. Venice wasn't just built to survive, it was built to impress. One of the oddest things about Venetian homes? No basements, no deep cellars. Everything begins at the foundation, which is why ground floors are often built to be sacrificial. If the water invades, they're the first to flood. That's also why many Venetians traditionally lived on the second and third floors, far from the reach of the rising tides. Venice's buildings are unusually tall for medieval standards, because expanding outward wasn't an option. But Venice never stopped moving. She grew island by island, built neighborhood by neighborhood. Venice isn't one landmass, it's 118 islands, each stabilized by its own forest of timber underneath. Venice has always been full of clever surprises hiding just beneath the surface. To get fresh water, Venetians dug wells right into the muddy ground, using layers of sand and clay to filter rainwater. So simple, yet so smart. Underneath the grand buildings, they placed wooden piles so close together that it's like a hidden forest holding everything up. But that's just the start. There are secret tunnels, sunken basements, even old crypts down there. Whole hidden levels most people never get to see. And when it came to burying their loved ones, they got creative again, building floating cemetery islands like San Michele. Even the resting places in Venice float. Venice isn't just beautiful, it's a masterpiece built by hand. Those dreamy canals, they were carefully crafted by engineers who directed the lagoon's waters to shape the city we see today. But time has taken its toll. Some buildings have started to lean, kind of like a mini Tower of Pisa, because the wooden foundations underneath have shifted over the centuries. And believe it or not, there's no sewer system under the city. For a long time, waste went straight into the canals. But thankfully, modern filtration has stepped in to clean things up. Instead of roads, they built bridges, over 400 of them. The streets are narrow, the homes tall. Venice was compact by necessity, but stunning by design. By the 12th century, it had paved squares, campi, cisterns to collect rainwater, and a well-established trade network. Beneath the narrow bridges and ancient apartments lie old Roman-era clay pipes, wells, and drainage systems. Some of these ancient utilities are still being discovered beneath collapsed structures, and when maintenance work uncovers secrets from the past. And beneath the Baroque dome of San Simone Piccolo, legend whispers of sealed tombs and forgotten burials. Some say archaeologists once found skeletal remains left untouched for centuries, resting in the eerie quiet of Venice's flooded underworld. Today, underwater drones and laser scanners are mapping Venice's submerged base in detail for the first time. From Roman ruins to cracks in the canal walls, this digital archaeology might be the key to saving the city. In 2020, a team discovered what appeared to be the remnants of a Roman road under the lagoon, a trace of life even before Venice was born. By the 11th century, it had become the gateway between Europe and the East. Salt, once as precious as gold, was one of Venice's first tickets to fortune. But soon came spices, silk, glass, and precious stones. The city created a vast trading empire, stretching from the Adriatic to the Aegean and beyond. At its height, the Republic controlled over 3,000 ships and dozens of ports in the Mediterranean. This wasn't a city anymore, it was a maritime empire. But no empire lasts forever. In 1797, Napoleon entered Venice without firing a shot. The ancient republic surrendered and was handed over to Austria. For the first time in over 1,000 years, Venice was no longer free. It wasn't until 1866 that Venice joined a unified Italy. But the Venetians are used to fighting the odds. To combat flooding, in 2003, Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi inaugurated the MOSE project, Modulo Sperimentale Elettromeccanico, 78 gigantic floodgates hidden beneath the sea. When tides are predicted to rise above 110 centimeters, 43 inches, the pontoons will be filled with air, causing them to float on the lagoon side while hinged at the seafloor on the seaside, thus blocking the incoming water from the Adriatic Sea. It's an expensive, controversial, but essential project that began construction in 2003 and was partially operational by 2020. Still, it saved Venice from catastrophic flooding in 2021. Beneath the lagoon, this wall of steel stands as the last line of defense. Yet the danger isn't just natural. Mass tourism, cruise ships, pollution, and climate change all threaten the balance Venice depends on. Venice is sinking at a rate of approximately 1 to 2 millimeters, 0.039 to 0.08 inches per year, primarily due to the natural process of the ground slowly compacting under the weight of the city's buildings. However, over time, the compaction of the soil, combined with human activity like groundwater extraction in the 20th century, has accelerated subsidence. At the same time, global sea levels are rising due to climate change, intensifying Venice's flooding issues. These events become more frequent and severe as sea levels rise, and weather patterns become more unpredictable. So, the next time you sip espresso by a Venetian canal, just remember, beneath your feet is a prehistoric forest, petrified in salt water, holding up marble palaces like a myth that somehow came true. And if you think Venice is the only place hiding secrets below the surface, think again. Stick around on our channel. We're diving into secret bunkers, buried cities, underwater tubes, and hidden chambers around the world. Because some of the world's most fascinating stories start underground.